To go with the shorts I made for the kids, I decided to make some tank tops. We've had some pretty hot days this summer. I found the pattern from the same company on Etsy that I got the shorts pattern from, and again, I'll have it linked below. This pattern was only 2 pieces as they gave the measurements for the bias binding instead of a pattern, so it was really easy to put together and cut out. I started with the main top pieces, lining them up along the fold and pinning them to the fabric before cutting them out. I'm again using this contrasting white fabric for the straps as it adds a nice touch, and I love how it looked with the shorts. Using my water erasable pen, I marked the bias binding measurements onto my fabric. There were 2 for the straps, and then 1 for the front of the top and 1 for the back. I marked the straps onto the fold, so I only had to cut it out once. I actually forgot I only needed 1 piece for the front and the back of the top and ended up cutting out 2 of each. Maybe I can use them for our future project or if I ever make these again. complete the bias binding, I fold my strips in half and press them with my iron. Then I fold each side in half towards the middle and press it again. Finally, I fold it in half one more time, encasing all the raw edges inside, and give it a final press. Now I can add it onto my top pieces. I grab the front bias binding, which is the longer one, and place the edge of the top into the bias binding. Then I pin it in place. I do the same for the back. This one was a little bit easier than the front because the front neckline has a curve where the back is just straight. When I went to stitch it together, I was having a lot of trouble keeping the stitches straight and found my fabric was stretching and warping from the pressure foot. This fabric has a good amount of stretch to it, and the pressure foot was stretching it as it sewed. I had noticed this making the shorts, but never found it to be a huge issue. So to solve the problem, I ended up getting a walking foot, which doesn't press on the fabric like a regular pressure foot. This worked like a charm, and I was able to stitch the bias on nicely. Next came the straps. I grabbed my long strips of bias binding and marked the middle of them with a pin. Then I measured out the amount indicated on the instructions and marked it on either side of the middle pin with 2 more pins. This would be the amount of strap going over the shoulders. I trimmed away the excess bias binding on the neckline and placed the armhole of the top into the strap bias binding, matching one of the outer pins of the strap with the top of the bias binding on the top. Then I pinned them together. I did the same for the other armhole. Then I grabbed my back piece and repeated the same steps for the back armholes. I found I had to stretch the bias binding a bit to make it go to the end of the armhole, even though I had the right measurements, and it actually made them a little extra long. I managed to make it work, but it was a little more challenging. Once everything was pinned, I stitched the straps onto the top, making sure to catch the binding on both sides. This can be a little tricky, and though I've definitely gotten better at it, I still had a couple spots I had to hand stitch that I missed when sewing them together. I gave it a good press with my iron, and then I was on to the last few steps. Now came time to put the top together. I matched up the sides and pinned them together before taking it over to the sewing machine and stitching it all together. It was a little tricky giving over the bias binding at the armholes because it was so thick, but I did manage to do it without breaking my needle. Then I serged the edges to keep them from fraying. While I was there, I decided to serge the bottom of the top as well to save me from having to come back and do it later. Then I gave it a good press with my iron, pressing the side seams towards the back. I folded the bottom of the top in by about 3/4 of an inch, pressed it with my iron, and stitched it in place. I gave it another press before moving on to the last step, which was simply to stitch the side seam of the armhole to the top. It gives it a clean look so the seam doesn't peek out of the armhole, and was fairly easy to do, though again, my machine struggled a little with how thick it was. I gave it a press, going over the rest of the top as well as a final touch, and I was done. These tops turned out so nicely and were such a fun and simple project with not that many steps. I actually made the tops a little big for each of them, not really on purpose, so they may even be able to wear them next summer too. They look so cute with the matching shorts, and again, I'm so happy I decided to go with contrasting fabric for the straps as it adds such a nice detail. Thank you so much for joining me as I made these pieces. Again, I'll have the patterns linked below for you if you'd like to check them out. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would give it a like and subscribe to see more upcoming sewing videos. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time.